Everybody, shouting nobody else's auto. We are back here once again with Doug Prey, who has been super cordial with us, taking a ton of time and really sharing some awesome stories about your dad, about how he bought the Auburn Cord Duesenberg company with a borrowed $20 and went from there to reintroducing the cars. You guys owned the company, you owned the name, and he came back with the smaller version of the cord, the Glen Prey cord, and then after that, which we talked about on the last video, so be sure to catch all the other videos to stay up to date with this, and get the books, because the books have even more stories. But then he did it again with the Auburn Speedster.
Yeah, and that was a time that I remember very well, because my first job was right here at this factory at 14 years old, and then I became the parts manager here. But he had left Cord. Cord was still producing cars, and he said, I'm going to show everybody, I'm going to build another car. This time it's going to be full size, and it's going to be all done with Ford components, but it was basically a Lincoln big block engines from 429s to 460s. And so it's one way you'll know today if it's a Glen Prey car, a Glen Prey Auburn, it will have a big block Ford in it. And it will always have functional exhaust. So the exhaust pipes that come out of the hood that were on the supercharged versions back then, they only came out of one side because they were a straight 8, come out of both sides because it's a V8. They're all functional. So if you see an Auburn out there and you wonder if it's a Glen Prey Auburn, look at the exhaust pipes are touching. If they burn you, then it's a Glen Prey car. So that was one of his trademarks. But he said, I'm just angry. I'm gonna start all over again, do it differently this time. And he did. And then this time there was no investors, no partners. He owned 100% of it.
It was his ideas, the way he was going to do it.
That's right.
And he did it right here.
And he did it right here.
We did a lot of it where we're sitting.
So you've got an original car out there from the 30s, and you say, I'm going to create it brand new in 1960s. And in fact, the model of his car is the 866, 8-cylinder designed in 66. So in 66, he came up with the idea, and I'm going to build this new Auburn Speedster. Well, there's no tooling, there's no parts, there's nothing, there's no hot rod shops in, there's none of speedways and Summit, all these places.
You don't get a catalog out and order a motor and order suspension. And
yeah, you have to figure it out, you have to design it, engineer it, design it, make it, build it, and then it's got to look good, it's got to handle good, it's got to drive good. And so he built the first 866 prototype, which it's actually back in town right now. It was lost for quite a few years, but the prototype, when he built the prototype, it got such acclaim and such attention. It was just, you drive up in it and have a big crowd around it. Nowadays, with all the different street rods and all the different customs and all the stuff out there, still a huge attention getter, but when it was in 1966, nobody had ever seen it. There was nothing like it. And I mean, it was the first in the world that had ever been done like this. And I remember as a kid going to shows with him, because he'd go to shows to kind of make sales and sell the cars. We never owned a trailer. Not an enclosed trailer, not an open trailer. They didn't have a trailer. So if you had a show in New York City, you just got in the prototype and drove it. And I, as a young kid, I remember getting my driver's permit when I was 15. And I would go to virtually every show with Dad. He'd always ask me to go. And I thought, this is great. I'd love to spend time with my dad. But he was basically needing a driver. And we had a rule when we drove. And Dad he never had hotel reservations in advance. And never left in the morning. You always left after work, and you drove all night, or sometimes we'd stay at some little roadside motel. But the rule was that I would drive a tank of gas, he'd drive a tank of gas. I'd drive a tank of gas, he'd drive a tank of gas. Except my tanks of gas always lasted about 3 hours, and his tank of gas lasted about an hour. And the reason was I wasn't allowed to speed. But I remember going through cornfields in Nebraska. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning and it's cold and I'm asleep in this 2-seater car. And I wake up and I look over at the speedometer and he's 110 miles an hour at 3 o'clock in the morning cruising cross country. And so then he'd use his gas up, and then it's my turn to drive. But we put 150,000 miles on that prototype.
Wow.
And then he was in production building the new Auburns. At our peak, we turned out a finished car, complete, that didn't exist, every 30 days. And so this was the assembly line right here in front, and there'd be 5 on the assembly line, from bare frame all the way down to the one closest to this door out here, would have been the finished car, and then it would drive out from there. So one car every 30 days. I think it says the exact number in the books, but total number of cars, new manufactured cars that Glenn Prater, the Auburn company, or Auburn Cord-Duesenberg company, built, was around 350 cars. So we built 350 cars. Didn't restore cars in those days. He was all about, building the new cars, and always had 100% satisfaction from customers. And every car that he ever built has done nothing but increase in value. And then his last couple years of building Auburns, he'd always said he wanted to build his own designed Auburn rather than Gordon Bury's design, which was his little Cord and the new Auburn Speedster, Boattail Speedster. He said, I want to design a dual cowl, meaning 2 windshields, back seat, and he said, I want a dash in the back. And and I was 16 at the time, and he got a calendar in, somebody had sent him, and there was a picture of a dual cowl Packard. And he goes, Doug, he says, the Packard, that's kind of what I want my design to look like. And I said, yeah, that's really beautiful, 2 windshields and really look nice. Well, unbeknownst to him, when he left, I went into his drafting table and took out his original drawings of the Auburn Speedster, and took the calendar and those drawings to my high school commercial art class, and I sat down to draw his new idea out on pencil, using that Packard and what I knew was in his head. And next day I brought it out here, and I just found it the other day. I actually have it. There's a picture of it in the book, but it was a pencil sketch, and I laid it here on his desk, and he looked at it and he goes, what's this? And I says, that's your new dual cowl Auburn. And he goes, that's exactly what I had in mind. That's what I want to do. But again, it's just all talk at this point. Well, just a couple of days later, one of his customers is coming in to pick up a new Speedster, and he sees my drawing on this desk.
The one right here, right where we're sitting. He was still laying there at that time.
He was on the desk. Now, I wasn't in here at that time, but Dad said that he asked what that picture was, and he said, oh, that's the new dual cowl Auburn I want to build one of these days. And he goes, well, what does it take to get the first one? And Dad says $5,000 down, and the guy wrote him a check for $5,000. And so he said, I guess I got to build it now.
you were in the dual cowl fan production then.
And what is kind of fun for me, after it was all built and everything, in that original picture, if you take my original drawing and hold it up next to one of the new dual cowl Auburns, it's pretty darn close. Pretty darn close. Just a kid's pencil sketch. So, and they talk about that in the book. I think there's a chapter kind of telling that story. But they built 17 of those. The first prototype, which that's a great story, but when he said that we're going to build it, now remember, this doesn't exist. There's no tooling for it. There's nothing.
I mean, basically the only thing you had was the front end, was still kind of had the Auburn look to it.
We had the Speedsters and all the ability to build a Speedster.
But everything from the dash back had to be designed, created, made work.
Longer chassis, longer wheelbase. From the front doors back, you're recreating. And the big Auburn Labor Day show was coming up, Labor Day weekend, the end of August. And it was 40 days away. And he called the crew in here and says, we're going to build that car and we're going to show it at Auburn.
So 40 days prior to the Auburn Labor Day event, it was your sketch laying on this desk. 40 days, and like he says, 40 days and 40 nights, because it was nothing but overtime.
the last week of the build, if they had cameras on us back then, I mean, nobody went home. We had a trim table back here. A guy would go take a nap on a trim table to just get, you know, a few minutes of sleep. Wives were bringing sandwiches out in the middle of the night. Nobody went home. Dad never left this building, never went to sleep for the last 6 days. Never left the building the last 6 days. The rear dash that's in it, which is a beautiful design dash, he hadn't even designed it yet. The day we're leaving, supposed to be leaving for the show. I mean, we've got it back in the back room and guys all around it. We don't even know what this thing looks like because we've just been, you know, we're just building it. And people doing things wrong. And then, of course, this typical thing, it wouldn't start, and it was something dumb and simple that should have not have been a problem because we've been building cars. And he says, I can't believe we're not going to make it over something like this. And the guy that was in charge of the engines and running, I remember him in here, and I was in here too, and he's coming in here, he's crying, I can't do it, you know. And so Glenn went out there, Dad went out there and got it, they solved the problem, got it running. We knew it was at that time we could drive straight through to Auburn, Indiana, if we were lucky, in 13 hours.
Because you'd been there a time or two at that point.
That's right. Yeah, since 55. The first show in Auburn was in 55, and now we're in 1974. So this car is now called an 874 because the 8-cylinder, he designed it in 74. And
so this is Labor Day weekend of 1974.
Right.
You're crunch time.
And we're down to the wire. It's like, okay, it's almost finished, but not quite. The parade starts then at about 11 o'clock in the morning. So you figure a 13-hour drive, it just,
and it's Friday evening at this point.
It's Friday evening now. And so we got to get there. So finally, with everybody rushing around at midnight, and it was exactly midnight, we had our old shop orange truck. We've got pictures of it. And at that time, we had a black industrial trailer that we hauled tractors on. It was parked out in front, 3-speed Ford, ugly plain Jane truck with this industrial trailer in the back.
Not like we think about today, where you got a 4-door pickup with leather seats, and you turn the radio and the air on, and
you load up in your beautiful post trailer, you know. So we lower it to the ground, take it off the jack stands, and the front end is setting up 6 inches too high, just sticks up in the air.
So you never had on the ground yet?
Yeah, it never been on the ground. Well, that should not happen. We've been building all these Speedsters. It's the same front end.
Yeah.
Well, the springs I ordered from Ford, the coil springs, were pickup springs, and they were taller and
heavier.
Heavier, yeah. And so, you know, it's midnight. We're ready to roll it out. And so everybody's just suddenly just, you know, panicking, injected. And Dad said, light the torch for me. Somebody lit the torch. And he crawls down under it and heats the spring up. He says, tell me when it's level. And then he goes to the other side, tell me when it's level. He's just running the spring. You know,
but they were the wrong springs anyway. They were going to have to be changed.
So we'll replace the springs when we get back. But it's that level. It looked good. And we rolled it out, and I remember rolling it out and getting ready to pull the trailer. And then we all stood back and looked and go, oh my God, you know, what did we just build? I mean, it was like the prettiest car I'd ever seen in my entire life. And that's the first time we've really seen it.
Yeah. And
we put it up on the trailer. The top hadn't been designed for it, but for the show, it's a convertible anyway.
Yep, right.
So there was not even a deck that we even wired the trunk shut because we didn't have the inside of the trunk finished out. And there was no top on it, but that didn't make any difference. Except we started driving, and I said, well, I'll drive to start. Well, I made it to Joplin, an hour and a half down the road, and I couldn't do it anymore. He said, I'll drive. And he hadn't slept in 6 days.
So you said it was about midnight when you finally pulled out.
It was a little after midnight when we finally pulled out. And then, of course, there's no top on it. It's not an enclosed trailer. And, of course, it starts raining on us somewhere in Indiana, pouring down daily. Well, we got this beautiful leather interior and this brand new car on an open trailer.
All these fancy new gauges. And
with, you know, the water blowing up from the pickup truck. And and it was hilarious. My girlfriend went with me, so Dad was driving, she was in the center, and I was over here. And we were scared to death about the leather mainly. I mean, the paint and everything else was going to clean. So Dad said, we can't stop or we're not going to make it. So he was driving at 80 miles an hour, as fast as we can get that old truck to go, come to an underpass, and he'd pull in the underpass and stop. Me and my girlfriend would get out and go back and wipe all the leather down, get back in the car, and he'd drive to the next overpass. We'd pull over, get out, wipe the leather down, and we just kept doing that until we finally drove out of the rain. And then we're about to Auburn, and we're looking at our watch and go, we missed it. You know, we're an hour and a half late. You know, the parade's got to be over by now. And so we're kind of dejected, and we're pulling town. The car's all muddy and dirty on the trailer back there. And when we pull in town, we say, the parade's going on right now. It's not over. So we know where the parade route is. So we go to the end of the parade, and it's really where it starts is now where the end of the parade is.
So the end of the parade was just getting to the starting point.
Right,
So.
end of the parade, end of the starting point. And the police car was at the end of the parade with his lights on, and he was the last car. And so it's going through town now, and we just pull up with the pickup and the car behind it, and thousands of people there, you know, cheering. And Dad keeps honking at the cop to get out of the way, you know, and finally he did, and the cop got behind us. And so parades go very slowly. So my girlfriend and I, we got out all the cleaning supplies, and we're on the trailer while Dad's pulling it, polishing the car. So everybody's cheering as we're polishing as we're going through the parade, trying to get it cleaned up. And about halfway through the parade, we had it looking pretty good. And so me and her just got in the back seat of it, up on the trailer, which was kind of a, you know, pretty good show. And then I remember then we come across the podium as the last car at the Midtown parade. It was the announcer, the commentator, was like, just had his mouth open because he knew every car that came by, and he, you know, Glen Parade, you know.
And it obviously had an Auburn front end.
Yeah.
So we knew it was an Auburn, but it was an Auburn nobody had ever seen before.
And so we did it. So we stopped right there in the middle of Main Street in front of the podium. All the other cars were parked, and we're right there in the middle of town with thousands of people around. And we unloaded off the trailer. And we pulled it off the trailer, and I've got pictures just showing these crowds swarming it. We didn't have hotel reservations or anything. I mean, we're just, you know, at this big event, and we're there, and like, okay. So he's in selling mode. By midnight that night, he'd taken orders for 7 of them. And with deposits, and, you know, here Glen Prairie does it again, comes with something new. Every year he went to Auburn, he had to go with something unique and different. And I remember just being, you know, just so excited to be a part of all that and seeing it all. In fact, he told all his guys when he finished it, I'll pay your way to Auburn if you want to go. Well, they were all too tired, nobody went. Except me and my girlfriend at the time, and we got a room at the Auburn Hotel, which is the old original hotel that's still there. It's a really neat piece of history. But it was a hotel from the 30s, no bathrooms in the rooms. They were down the hallway, and the same wallpaper on the walls from 1935. But they had a room for us, so we stayed at the old Auburn Hotel right in the middle of the thing. I think the room at the time cost us like $17 a night, and but it wasn't worth $10 a night. but we were there in the harbor.
And you were tired.
We were tired, so fun trip, and made it back, and then built 17 of those. And we have the last one off the assembly line we have right out here. In fact, we're going to go drive it here in a minute. So the very last one built off the assembly line. And the reason it was the last one, in 1981, Dad had a heart attack.
Oh.
And I guess just the stress and the up and down of this business was, you know, it just, you know, anyway. And he smoked, and he had a heart attack, and so he said, "You got to shut down production. I can't keep doing this anymore." So he sent deposits back from everybody had deposits on new cars. He said, "Sorry, you know, I'm not going to be able to He kept the last car on the line that was just a bare frame, but all the parts were there to build it. And he went out there and built it himself. He says, I'm keeping this for myself. It really hurt him to shut down because he said, that means I got to go back there and start selling parts again and stuff.
Right.
And it's not what he wanted to do. But for his health, so in 81, he built 350 cars. Everybody, all debts got paid. Nobody, was left hanging on anything. And he had a number, it might be in the book, but about 11 other companies copied his car, actually pulled molds directly off our cars and built copies of them, just, copies of copies. And so they're not real Glen Prairie cars. But there was probably 11 different companies, I think is the number, that tried to build Auburns. Every one of them failed and went bankrupt. Every single new car manufacturing company that tried to do what Glen Prairie did, which has been hundreds, I'm going to go into car manufacturing business. Up until just recently, every one of them failed. Out of 100 that tried, nobody could do it. And he was the only one that started it, finished it, everybody got paid, and it all worked perfectly,
And he made some amazing cars.
Yeah, and then you look at the car, and when one drives up and I look at it sitting outside there, I think, I can't believe we built these back then, It's like, how did he do it? How did we do it? And I worked out on the assembly line. So you see a Glen Prairie car today, chrome plated windshield, chrome gravel guards, chrome bumpers, chrome headlights. Any chrome part on a Glen Prairie Auburn, my job, I made the part. I owned a chrome plating shop. I chrome plated the part and I installed the part. So if you got a Glen Prairie car, I worked on it. I've been a part of it. So that was so number 17 is still out here. And then the number 1 prototype, that's kind of another story about it, but it disappeared for 20 years. And we found it, and it's restored, and it's back here in town, and it's owned by Felix de Guyder, that has been on and off with this company since 1963.
Oh, wow.
And he's got a collection. He's the number 1 historian of Glen Prairie vehicles. And he has, I think, between Cords and Auburn's Glen Prairie cars, he has probably around 15.
Oh, wow.
And he's got about 30 cars in his little collection over there. And so you'll need to go see the number 1 prototype.
Oh, absolutely. That would be awesome.
It's right back here in town. And so the first car he built is here, last car he built is here.
Wow. So. And the thing about it, like I said, you've got to get these books. We've showed them to you on the other videos. Glen Prairie, the man who brought the legends to life. The DVD of Prairie's Passion. Glen Prairie, the Untold Stories. These are all available on the Auburn Cord-Duesenberg Factory website, acdfactory.com. The other book we've got here is another version of this book here, The Man Who Brought Legends to Life. This is a hardback, like display coffee table type book with color pictures in it. This was a limited run. We were just out there. There's about 2 handfuls of these left on the shelf. So if you want this one, you definitely need to get a hold of these guys, get one of these ordered. Like I said, we've just touched on it. I got this yesterday and read the whole thing. It was that good. So, like I said, the stories we've heard in these videos are just the tip of the iceberg, have not even gotten into this book. So, I'm super excited to do it because, like you said, there's way more stories than we can get to, but they're in there.
Lots of stories, and then what we need to do is go out there and go drive the last one ever built. Let you guys drive it, and we'll put you back there in the passenger seat, and we'll chauffeur you around, and you can...
You're not going to have to twist my arm very hard for that.
So we'll go do that, and then we'll show you all these. We'll talk about the restoration projects we're doing now, because
awesome.
We're back open for business. And the last 10 years, when he died 10 years ago, we're open for business again, and we're doing Concours restoration on original cars and still doing all the Glen Prairie cars.
Wow, so tons of cool stuff going on. Check out their website. Keep up with these guys got going on. Or, if you need a car restored, they can do that. If you like these cars, the knowledge here is second to none. The parts, you have the parts, you have the knowledge, you can fix this stuff, you can sell them the parts for it. There's so much cool stuff going on here. I'd heard about this place till I walked in the door and really saw what was happening here. There's no way to comprehend it. So I can't thank you enough for the time you're taking for us, sharing your stories with everybody. It's just such an amazing story. We're all here because we're gearheads, and that's what's so great about this. There's cars here that you just don't see them. They've never made a lot of them, but they're absolutely amazing pieces of art. From the original stuff to the stuff your dad designed to the dual Cowl Phaeton that you designed, and you know, and it's just amazing what is really here. So stay tuned. Lots more cool stuff coming. If you're on Facebook, please share the video with your friends. Invite them to come like the page. Check out all the other videos we've done. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. Check out all the rest of the videos we've shot. Go to acdfactory.com. Get your own copies of these books. Like I said, this one I didn't put down. Picked it up in here yesterday. Finished it up this morning before we even came back here. So there's that many good stories in it, including you sold the car to a king.
Oh yeah, King of Morocco.
The King of Morocco has his own Glen Prey Auburn Speedster.
Right.
So like I said, there's so much great stuff in these books that reading it yourself is the only way you're really going to understand it. Plus, there's great pictures in these books and so much history. So if you're a gearhead, which if you're here, I assume you probably are, you'll definitely want to catch them. So, Doug, thank you so much for the time you've taken. I super appreciate it. Thanks to all you guys for hanging out, spending a little time with us. And stay tuned because there is so much more cool stuff here we're going to show you.
Yeah,
So
let's go drive a car.
You're not going to have to ask me twice. So thanks for watching, everybody.